I read somebody on Twitter last week. If your team didn't make huge signings in the first week of free agency and didn't get the players you want, the season's over. You're going to come in last place. And it was sort of a mock tweet to say, hey, listen, it's all on paper now. There's still plenty of free agency left. There's a draft. You don't know what's going to happen.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Essentially Sports DraftCast with Tony Pauline. I am your host, NFL Editor-in-Chief Tim Wood, alongside the draft expert, Tony Pauline. How are you today, sir?
Doing okay. A little bit miserable weather here in New York, but it's not snowing. Nice weekend. My alma mater, St. John's, won the Big East tournament.
Yeah?
I happened to the game Saturday night. That was exciting. It's the first
You ended
basketball
up
game
going?
I've been to. Yes, first basketball game I've been to in about 30 years. That's why my voice is a little bit hoarse. I was cheering for him, so that's always fun.
Fantastic. Congrats.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I was deciding on whether or not to go, and then I realized, except for the combine and going to the gym every day and the supermarket once or twice a week, I've only been out of the house or out of this office about 3 times since I got back from the Senior Bowl. So I said, heck with it. I finished what I had to do with the SEC reports, and I'm still not finished with them. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go. So I went. It turned out to be great. It was an electric atmosphere, I can tell you. I mean, I've been in that garden for a lot. I saw Zeppelin there in '77. It was absolutely electric Saturday night, and I'm not even a basketball fan, so
No.
I enjoyed it.
But you're Johnny's.
Right.
You're St. John's guy. So I mean, I was thinking of you. I figured you might be there. I was thinking you as I was watching that. That's Patino's a legend, man, and he's got that team rocking and rolling. So congrats to you there.
About a handful of players in there, people in there yelling, "Let's go Redmen!" Now I know that may not sit well with people, but I was there in the '80s.
Yeah,
I was there on a scholarship, and we were the St. John's Redmen. They changed their names for they changed the nickname for a different reason. But old ways die hard.
It's like, listen, I get it that it's the Commanders now, but like I'm not going to call the 83 Redskins the 83 Commanders, it is what it is, but hey, congrats to you. It's funny you say that about getting out of the house. It's like, I host trivia twice a week. And other than that, it's like, I'm like an agoraphobe. So, yeah, good on you. Glad you had a good time and glad you got the W. Well, the Baltimore, the Las Vegas Raiders did not get the W this week.
No.
That was a crazy situation with one Maxx Crosby and the Raiders and the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, it was. We'll get into it a little bit deeper. I've got some information on it. I think it caught a lot of people by surprise. I don't remember a trade of this caliber being reneged because of injury concerns. I know of a few free agent signings that have happened in the past, specifically with Roger Saffold, the offensive lineman, and the Oakland Raiders. Back in 2014, the Raiders offered Roger Saffold a huge contract. He was the second big offensive lineman that they signed. And there was a lot of mocking and people saying that the Raiders had overpaid. And sure enough, Roger Saffold in 2014 goes to his medical, and the Raiders fail him on the medical. So the contract and negotiation was voided. Roger Saffold eventually went back to the Rams and signed a significantly smaller deal. But it is kind of ironic. I guess, what goes around comes around, right? People say what goes around comes around. The Raiders did it to Roger Saffold in 2014. So I'm sure there are a lot of people who remember that story are kind of laughing as the tables are turned. And the Raiders thought they were getting a huge haul for a terrific but overaged pass rusher, and now that turned out not to be true because the Ravens because the Ravens said he failed the physical, or he failed the physical with the Ravens.
Hasn't been a ton of these type. I mean, you might remember the Lee Suggs move with the Jets back in 2006. That was voided because of a physical. The Browns running back going to the Jets, and then Jerome Harrison 2011. Same deal. Lions running back was supposed to go to the Eagles. That was voided. That ended up saving Harrison's life because they discovered a brain tumor.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of voided trades, you got to look to other sports. Chris Paul with the Lakers, the Lakers trade in the NBA 2011. That was the biggest in the NBA, and then before that, it was A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez going to the Red Sox, and the league voided that trade. There was no injury concerns. It was the league voided it for contract concerns. So, but I mean, in terms of the NFL, this is the biggie.
Especially now. I mean, with all the talk about Maxx Crosby wanting to be out of out of Las Vegas, and yeah, I mean, and now in the day and age of social media, I think it's kind of takes a life of its own, and people start drawing conclusions that may not be completely true.
What have you heard a little in terms of those conclusions?
Well, I'm told that Crosby had meniscus surgery about 8 9 weeks ago, and there was no way he was going to pass the physical. So what I can draw talking to people on all sides of the aisle is that DaCosta probably got cold feet because he realized from what he was hearing and reading that he was getting fleeced in the deal by sending 2 first round picks to the Raiders for Maxx Crosby. The meniscus surgery gave him a legitimate and easy reason to get out of the trade, and then he was able to sign Trey Hendrickson, and I've got more on that. So, do I think that, from what I'm told, that DaCosta and the Ravens purposely failed Maxx Crosby? No, I'm told there was legitimate reason there to fail him, but I'm told anybody would have failed because Crosby's coming off the surgery barely 2 months
I mean,
ago.
that was the thing that was crazy to me. It's like you knew exactly where he was at. You knew that he was not going to fully pass a physical after the surgery. Like you said, it gave him an out. But yeah, I think they read the tea leaves and they saw the social media reaction. They saw that they thought the Cowboys were going to offer the first round picks, and they realized, oh no, they weren't going to go 2 first round picks. So then they're feeling like, all right, well, like you said, we've got an out here, and they took it. And hey, you can do that, but like you said, it that stuff tends to come around on you.
And the fact that they were able to bring another real good
Oh
pass rusher
yeah.
in Trey Hendrickson, I think also made it a little bit easier.
What did you hear in terms of that deal being and it coming together so quick?
Well, I mean, I heard that there were talks. I heard that Washington Commanders, Tampa Bay Bucks, Dallas Cowboys, and the Philadelphia Eagles were in on Trey Hendrickson, as well as the Baltimore Ravens. I was told by a very legitimate source a few hours before we taped this podcast that one team actually offered Trey Hendrickson more money, but the Ravens offered him a better deal with longer years and more guarantees. So while if Hendrickson played with this other team, who I'm not going to mention, in 2026, he would have made more money this season, but the overall deal was better for Hendrickson, and it gave him more guarantees and more money in the long term, which is why he went with the Ravens. Do I think that this deal, or can I bring the tea leaves together and say this deal was consummated before Maxx Crosby uh, was failed, before the Ravens failed Maxx Crosby? No, I have no information about that. And I was told really up until the last minute, there were other teams that were bidding to sign Trey Hendrickson.
The other thing with the Crosby trade, uh, you got 32 doctors, you got 32 opinions around the league. There's going to be you can it's not a set pass fail. It's every team's evaluation of a player. And that's what a lot of people were not understanding. It's almost like I saw a lot of conjecture on social media that it was almost like, we're talking about the medical evaluations at the combine. No, it's not the same thing. It's every team's doctor has their own opinion.
I completely disagree with you because
No?
that's absolutely the way it is at the combine. You do have
Well, no,
32
that's
teams there, and you
okay.
will get 32 different opinions. That's why, you know, you see Howie Roseman with the Eagles have great success with guys taking guys like Jihad Campbell late in the first round, a guy who was supposed to be a top 15 pick, but he failed medicals because of his shoulders. And I remember reporting time there was concern he may not even be able to play in 2025 because of his shoulder. Howie Roseman and the Eagles doctors see it differently. They take him in the first round and they have success. They had success with Landon Dickerson, the interior offensive lineman from Alabama, who had multiple season ending injuries on the college level. Teams basically took Dickerson off their board. The Eagles were okay with it. So, your premise is absolutely right. I mean, with Maxx Crosby, 32 teams, you could potentially get 32 different opinions, but it's the same situation with the combines, with the medicals at the combine, which is why some guys drop, and eventually a team like the Eagles with the players I mentioned, with the Commanders with Montez Sweat, if you remember that situation, there comes a point where the player becomes the reward outweighs the risk.
Is there any like why is the medicals we've talked about this in past podcasts, but like why are the medicals if are is there information sharing that goes on at the combine in terms of the medicals, or like why do the medical evals become so important at the combine then?
Well, the only information sharing that goes on, as far as that I know of, are the MRIs and the X-rays and things like that. If you go back to one of our earlier podcasts, that's why the combine really was invented, if you will, because these guys, the top prospects in the late '70s, were going from team to team to team and having 6, 7, 8 sets of X-rays. And the team said, let's just get together. We'll have one X-ray, one set of X-rays, eventually one set of MRIs, and we'll just pass out the results to everybody. Now, the way those teams view those X-rays, review those results, and the final opinions that they come to are absolutely different. This is nothing new. I mean, the New York Jets go back in the day, they failed Anthony Munoz because of knee issues. They said he's never, he's never going to amount to anything because of
How'd that
knee
work
issues.
out?
He becomes a Hall of Fame offensive tackle. So I mean, it's nothing new. I mean, they will have different opinions, team to team, medical staff to medical staff, and then it's up to the. And what happens is, just from a draft perspective, is the medical decisions are usually made a week before the draft. They'll get the team doctors in there. They'll talk about the players. They'll give their opinions, on the players, the medical department, and then the teams will, if a guy has medical red flags, debate. At what point in time do we consider taking this player?
Gotcha. um In terms of the Raiders, where do they go from here? I mean, do you see a trade happening before the season? Can they afford to keep him? I mean, is he a Raider now?
Well, you asked a bunch of different questions
Yeah.
there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
From the Maxx Crosby point of view, he's set on being a Raider for life. That's his frame of mind right now. As far as can the Raiders afford him, I'm told they still have over $50 million in cap space with Maxx Crosby on the roster. So for far as I can see, unless someone can point something else out, they've got plenty of roster space. I'm also told that the Raiders are fielding offers for Maxx Crosby, and they're going to continue to, if not openly, put him on the market, have backdoor conversations about potentially moving him. And if the right offer comes up, they probably would move him. Now, this is an opinion of somebody in the league. There's no basis for this, so I don't want people going out there say, "Hey, Tony Pauline said this is going to happen." No, there's an opinion from people out there that they wouldn't be surprised if Howie Roseman and the Eagles come in at the last minute and try and scoop Crosby away from the Raiders in a trade. That's the opinion of people. There's nothing. It's just speculation. And then if you want to really take that one step further, well, what position do the Raiders need probably more than any other? Offensive line and receiver. Who's the receiver on the Eagles that seems to be disgruntled? That's talked about in trade about potentially being moved in a trade.
Why not?
AJ Brown, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, if you want to really speculate even further, AJ Brown for Maxx Crosby. I think Howie Roseman's going to want more than just Maxx Crosby for AJ Brown, but AJ Brown's not happy because he's not getting the targets in Philadelphia. You trade him to the Raiders, he'll be the number one target for Fernando Mendoza. Although I think, as I said, Roseman's going to want more for AJ Brown. I don't know that the Raiders are going to want to part with picks as they basically go through their rebuild.
Now, anytime you're dealing with Roseman, you're not going to get the better end of the deal. So, in Roseman's mind, Brown's worth more than Crosby, but the Raiders aren't going to see it that way for sure. I mean, that's on the Raiders side. That's probably a a 1-for-1 deal with some late round draft picks exchange, maybe, but nothing nothing stupendous beyond the players, I would think.
I wouldn't think so because the Raiders are a lot more than just one receiver from getting over the hump. It would absolutely help Fernando Mendoza. AJ Brown may be very happy with it because he's going to get the targets that he wants. But if that's why I said I don't think it would happen unless the Raiders sweeten the pot.
And from what I hear, the Patriots trade talks are not really I wouldn't say dead end from what I'm hearing, but definitely not in an optimistic place right now in terms of Brown to New England.
There's a lot of time left. I mean, remember,
Oh
AJ
yeah.
Brown wasn't traded until the middle of the first round when he went from the Titans to the Eagles. So, I mean, you never know. There's another month and 6 weeks before the draft. We'll see what happens.
All right, let's move on to the Scouts notebook and let's talk about how this free agency is going to potentially impact the 2026 NFL draft. Um, which team's free agent moves are going to most impact their draft plans and how?
Well, I think you start off with the Carolina Panthers, who I thought did a sensational job in the
Yeah.
first week of free agency. I mean, you came in and you know that they needed an edge rusher and a linebacker. In fact, when I did my mock drafts, that was always a sticking point. Who was I going to put there with the Carolina Panthers? Because all the top edge rushers were off the board, and there were no off-ball linebackers still available that were worth that pick. Well, they answered both questions in free agency. They give Jalen Phillips a huge deal. He's a terrific fit for their system. And then they signed Devin Lloyd, a guy who I believe is one of the most underrated linebackers, great off-ball linebacker. And then
Absolutely.
they come back and they signed Rasheed Walker from the Packers last week. And there is some concern. Ikem Ekwinua had that late season injury where he tore multiple tendons in his knee. There's talk they don't know when he's going to be back in 2026, if he's going to be back in 2026. So I thought the Panthers did just a phenomenal job, and now they go into the draft with most of their major needs filled. They can look at tight end if Saquon if Rashid Kenyon Rashid Kenyon Sadiq somehow falls to them. They can look at defensive back. So I thought they were right off the bat a team that basically their free agent moves helps now dictate a change in direction as far as what they're going to do in the early part of the draft anyway.
The Lloyd deal was just, I mean, just sniped. I mean, it's like, first of all, how does he last to day two of free agency? And then how do the Panthers sneak in there? And I mean, like you said, I'm a huge fan of Lloyd. Been watching him with, they're as local as a team as I have down here, other than me watching the Patriots. So I've been watching him for years, and he is every bit worth. That's going to be a steal for them, I think.
And the Jaguars brought regret not putting that 50-year tag on him because
Yeah,
not only did they lose him, but they lost Travis Etienne, who goes to New Orleans.
A chain. He's
Now
pronouncing it A chain now.
okay, yeah. Now Jeremiah Love, who everyone thought was going to go to the Saints, I think he's going to go before that. But everyone said, Saints will take Jeremiah Love. He's off the board for them now. Even the Kansas City Chiefs, who have the selection after the New Orleans Saints at number 9. They signed Kenneth Walker. So Jeremiah Love is off the board for both of those players, both of those teams. Whether they thought that they were getting great value in the players they signed, whether they thought there's no chance that they were going to be able to select Jeremiah Love, he
That
would have been
Love would
wrong.
fall there. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. But now, New Orleans, with their first pick, they can look tight end, they can look edge rusher, maybe a wide receiver. The Chiefs, as I said in my recent mock draft that was released last week, they're looking offensive linemen. So now, you got Kenneth Walker. You don't have to worry about Jeremiah Love or Francis Mauioga's there. You look towards him, maybe a wide receiver. And again, the signings of those running backs will dictate what those teams do, at least in the early part of round one. Now, Kansas City has a second first round pick due to the trade of Trent McDuffie. So, they can come back. They still don't need a running back. They can come back, maybe get a cornerback, maybe get a receiver, maybe get an offensive lineman with that second selection in round one, depending on what they do with the ninth pick.
How does, I mean, Love, a lot of like you said, a lot of mocks. It was almost like it was preordained that he was going to the Saints at 8 in a lot of these mocks,
No,
or 9 for the Chiefs.
no.
A lot of mocks have him going higher now. Is this hurting or helping?
I don't think it makes a difference for Jeremiah Love. I think
Yeah.
the teams got what they wanted. I mean, I've consistently had Jeremiah Love going to the Arizona Cardinals at 3.
Yep. Yep.
We had Paige on last week, and she doesn't think that's going to happen. There's a lot of talk here. He's going to end up number 5 with the Giants, which I think would be a great selection. Giants did a good job answering a lot of their needs in free agency. I don't think it really helps or hurts Jeremiah Love. I think if I was able to ask the New Orleans Saints and the Kansas City Chiefs, if I was able to put the truth meter hat on them or whatever, and say, did you sign these guys because you thought that there was no chance that Jeremiah Love was going to fall to you? That would be an interesting answer.
Yeah. Yeah. And you gotta have to put the polygraph on to make sure they're not lying there.
Yeah,
um, you do work with the Giants as well. Is there any talk around Love and like what the feeling is in terms of hearing the speculation of Love at 5?
well, I do work with the New York Giants, but I don't ask them for information. So let's get that
Yep.
let's get that clear. But yeah, there's been a lot of speculation that the Giants really like Jeremiah Love. I've thought all along he would be a great selection for them. You look at Harbaugh's history; he's always been somebody that's been a one back sort of type of player. They have Tyrod Taylor, they have Cam Scatterboo. Those weren't Jim Harbaugh's guys. Scatterboo's coming back from is going to have to come back from a significant ankle injury. Taylor's a good situational runner. In my opinion, especially when you look at some of the moves they made, they got the cornerback in free agency, they got the linebacker in free agency. I think Jeremiah Love would make a lot of sense, especially it takes the pressure off of Jackson Dart. And I'll be honest with you, I thought all along, a lot of these mock drafts, I kind of laughed when they had the Giants taking Jordan Tyson, a Cornell Tate. I thought that was woefully early for either of those prospects, and Jeremiah Love always stacked up much higher on my board compared to those guys.
It was more fantasy foot. That's when I looked at some of those drafts early, it just felt more fantasy football than
Yeah.
actual needs and matches for teams, like you said. All right, how about some of these other teams like the Rams, the Jets, the Raiders, in terms of how their free agency impacts their draft?
Well, everybody thought the Rams early on were going to take a cornerback, Mansour Delane, very likely the first cornerback off the board to the Rams if he lasted that long. They trade for McDuffie. They give him a huge contract. They also re-signed what was it, Cam Curl. They re-signed one of their own defensive backs. Let me bring it up here in a second. They re-signed Cam Curl.
Curl,
They
yep.
signed They signed Jalen Watson. So their secondary is set.
Oh,
I mean, they're absolutely set. So now, you're looking at and I had it in my mock draft last week. perhaps Makai Lemon, perhaps a receiver with that first pick. There's talk that they could try and move Devontae Adams and get a draft pick for him because they're going to have to pay Puka Nakua a lot of money real soon, and they want to keep him in the mix. So obviously, they feel the need at cornerback in free agency. They feel the need at basically two cornerback spots and re-sign one of their own safeties. Now with that first pick, they're only picking the first round right now because they traded the other one to the Chiefs for Trent McDuffie. They can look in a different direction. You would expect that direction is going to be receiver. When it comes to when it comes to the Jets, I mean, there was a lot of thought that the Jets could take Caleb Downs with that first pick. They trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick, comes to New York. Caleb Downs is now off the board. I mean, they're not going to go safety, which means maybe it's Arvell Reese, although they did bring another linebacker in. You know, maybe I still don't think there's some talk that they like Ty Simpson. I can't see them taking Ty Simpson. They brought Demario Davis in, which if you remember from the combine, I said that they were going to go after Demario Davis, and they did sign him. I don't think that stops them from considering Arvell Reese with that second pick, but the fact that they traded for Minkah Fitzpatrick basically means that Caleb Downs is off the board at number 2 right now.
So there's a rumor that we might be getting together in New York City later this week and potentially doing a live mock draft. If you were to consult somebody who would be drafting for the Jets, uh, would you would you still feel good going with Reese?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Demario Davis, as I said at the combine, they targeted him. He's 37 years old. Doesn't have a lot left in the tank. I think with Davis, you fill the need of an off-ball, a more athletic, younger off-ball linebacker who can also rush the passer when necessary. I do not see him as an edge rusher. I think you have to because for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's going to help fill a need. Number two, he's going to be the best player available on the board when you're called to the clock with the second selection.
All right. Well, hypothetically, your check's in the mail for that consult. Appreciate it on the Jets.
Mhm.
All right. How about the Raiders? First,
Eh,
first roundabout with Brady more in the building on
uh,
free agency front. How do you think it all plays out for their draft?
Well, I mean, again, it's for them. It's more the top of round 2
Yeah.
than it is the first pick of the draft because they're going to take Mendoza. I think they signed Jalen Naylor, which helps them at receiver, which is a desperate need for them. They signed Tyler Linderbaum at center to give him a huge contract, which I believe actually helps two positions because now you have Tyler Linderbaum at center. You can move Jackson Powers Johnson over the guard. Still have a big need at offensive tackle. Still really need more receivers. But again, I think the fact that they solidified the middle of the offense with Linderbaum and added a potential starting receiver at least changes the dynamic of the second round. Maybe they go Max Ioannakor, the big right tackle, if he's available. I think another receiver is not out of the question because they still need help there. But that's the way it looks right now.
It's interesting with this whole deal. It's like, normally when you have fallout from this, there's hardcore losers in a situation like this. The Raiders don't listen. The Raiders didn't lose here. They get a franchise player back on their on their roster, and like you said, still look at trades if possible. The Ravens end up getting their guy with Hendrickson. So on the surface, everybody comes out fairly clean in this non-deal other than the mock drafters who were all excited that there was a change at number 13 or right there, and that would have shooken up that middle part of the first round.
I read somebody on Twitter last week. I don't know who it was, but they said something to the extent that if your team didn't make huge signings in the first week of free agency and didn't get the players you want, the season's over. You're going to come in last place. And it was sort of a mock tweet to say, "Hey, listen, it's all on paper now. I mean, there's still plenty of free agency left. There's a draft. You don't know what's going to happen." So I think like everything else, there's too much overreaction to a lot of what went on. It makes for good conversation. We can fill up a lot of the show with this. But there's too much just hype and overreaction to what's going on.
With 500,000 podcasts out there, it's like it's like the you're trying to win the PR battles in the off season, and like you said, it doesn't amount to anything on the field. It's just GM solidifying their job maybe until they play on the field.
Yeah, and when you try and do that, it turns around. You try and win the PR battle, it turns around to bite you in the rear end. And I go back to with the Jets signing Le'Veon Bell. I mean, they signed
Oh
Le'Veon
yeah.
Bell because they lost out on some big names in free agency. I was told the owner got involved. They needed to make a big splash. They signed a Bell, and that turned out to be it wasn't a disaster, but it wasn't a good move for the team.
It was as close to it. Yeah, I mean, he hadn't played for what, like a year.
Year,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, it's the PR battle is not the ones you got to win. They don't count on the win loss ledger at the end of the day. All right. The other big story going on in your world right now, Tony,
Mhm.
is the pro days are
Yeah.
getting ramped up here. Week one of the pro day workouts are in the books. What's your big takeaways from week one?
Well, let me say, I hope everybody's enjoying the daily pro day workout reports that I've had. Some decent information there. I think the first week, or it wasn't even a full week of pro days, the Bears are going to draft a center at some point in April. I don't know if it's going to be day two. I don't know if it's going to be day three. But they've had both of their offensive line coaches. They've had the director of scouting out at all these workouts, whether it be Kansas State with Sam Heck, whether it be Georgia Tech, where they asked the guard Keenan Rutledge to do some work at center. Obviously, it's a position of need. They traded for Garrett Bradbury, but I know they want to get a younger guy in there. So my early impression is at some point in the draft, probably in the middle rounds, I would look for the Bears to select the center. The other one, and this is going to go back and forth, is all the negative hype we've heard about Makai Lemon's interviews and the interviews with the media at the combine is just that right now. That's what I'm hearing. It's all negative hype. It's really not much to read into. I read saw somebody last week that said because of his running style, and the interviews, Makai Lemon's draft stock has taken a big hit. I don't agree with that. I don't think he gets past 15. I still think he could end up with the Rams with that first selection. Maybe that will change because once we have full team meetings, more information will leak out, and those team draft meetings don't happen until 2 weeks before the draft. But as of right now, I don't hear people saying, there's no way I'm drafting Makai Lemon because of his interviews.
I mean, the talent's undeniable when it comes to Lemon.
Great pass catcher, not the biggest guy in the world, not the fastest guy in the world, but neither was Jordan Addison, and he's turned out to be a quality NFL receiver.
Not too shabby. Uh, one thing I wanted to ask you. Actually, no, we'll get to Murray. We'll get to Murray later. Let's talk a little bit in terms of scouts look back.
Yeah,
Uh, Bashaud Breeland,
yeah.
2018. What's
That's
the what's the story there that you wanted to bring?
Yeah, well, we talked about Maxx Crosby failing the physical. I mentioned the story about Roger Saffold. This was an interesting one. Bashaud Breeland was a free agent, came out of Clemson, played with the Chargers, was a very good player. They were gearing up for Breeland to sign a massive free agent contract. The Cleveland Browns were very interested. I was working with a place called Orange and Brown Report. Barry McBride, longtime friend, known him for 25 years. And I said, the Browns like Rashad Breeland. And then about 2 weeks before free agency began, I got word that Rashad Breeland was on vacation, driving a three-wheeler, got into an accident, which really screwed up his foot. And there was no way he was going to pass physicals. Uh, I couldn't. I had to hold on to the information. I was asked to, like I mentioned, the team that was offered Trey Hendrickson more money. I was asked to hold on the information about that, which I did. Sure enough, the Browns pass on Bashaud Breeland. He comes to an agreement with the Carolina Panthers on I believe, a 3-year, $24 million contract. He goes to the Carolina Panthers for their physical. They fail him because he has an affected foot. They see what the situation is. They said, "No way, this guy's playing for us." The contract is voided. He ends up signing an $880,000 contract with the Green Bay Packers. Plays half the year and really didn't have much of a career after that. So with Rashad Breeland, that was a case where there was a significant injury that not only negated the large contract he had negotiated as a first time free agent, but really affected his career.
Man, man. And
And
you
just a,
mentioned,
just a side note to
yeah, yeah.
when he signed with the Cleveland Browns, all the Brown fans were cascading me for being a fraud and not knowing what I was talking about. And I said, just watch what happens when he has the medicals. And then he failed the medicals, and they said, maybe Tony's not such a big jackass after all.
And you mentioned Barry there, just as a sidebar to your story there. Barry, uh, longtime friend of yours, and I followed him for years. Uh, I think he was one of the first people that responded to your free agency post that you were a free agent, and that popped up on my feed. So that's how
Yeah,
I found out. So
yeah.
thanks, Barry.
Yeah, Barry did reach out to me immediately, and I actually said no. I was on one of his podcasts or on the OBR podcast. I think right after the combine, I think it was.
Yep.
And I'll probably hop on another once or twice before the draft. I go back to the days of rivals with
Yeah.
Barry 25 plus years ago.
You talk about good people in the business and survivors. I mean,
Yeah,
he's good people for sure.
yeah, and he's definitely a survivor,
Oh
which is
yeah,
why I.
absolutely. All right, so back to our talking points here, Tony. Cowboys were trying to figure. Everybody wanted them to figure into the Crosby talks, to the Trey Hendrickson talks. Um, did they get it wrong not going all in on either one of these guys?
In my opinion, no, because I don't know that Crosby's gonna send them over the top. Now they did trade for Rashawn Gary, who has been a solid pass rusher the past couple of years. He's not great. He's not a double digit per year guy, but he is solid. Um, Trey Hendrickson, I think, just got too pricey for him, and they still got to do something with George Pickens out there. They want to sign him to a long-term deal. As far as Maxx Crosby, you know, uh, I think once the Ravens offered the 2 first-round picks, they were out of it. They could still be in it. So did they get it wrong? No. We're only 1 week into it. I can understand why they didn't want to offer Trey Hendrickson, although I like Trey Hendrickson. I can understand why they didn't want to offer him that huge amount of money. They have other needs and other areas they have to address. So no, and they got a decent pass rusher.
Hendrickson wanted he wanted the money, right? And the Cowboys are just, Cowboys aren't going to do a thing like the Raiders did, for instance, with Linderbaum. They're not going to reset a market at a position.
I don't know that Hendrickson wanted the money. I think that, Hendrickson wants to win. Hendrickson wanted to sign a long-term deal and finish his career in Cincinnati. I
Yeah.
reported last year. That's what he wanted. He
Yep.
wanted a fair deal, and he was happy retiring with the Bengals, even though there was a limited chance he was going to win. Hendrickson wants to win. He wants to go to a place where he's wanted. That's the type of person he is. So I think that with the deal that the Ravens gave him, the fact they have a quarterback there, the fact that they're probably not that far, although they're starting again with the new coach, I think for Hendrickson, it's the best of all the worlds.
Yeah, you talk about the Bengals. They've neglected their defense for years, and to neglect a guy that wanted to finish his career there. Now they made some decent defensive signings. The Bengals did in free
Right.
agency this first week, but man, to let Hendrickson go, I just I don't see how they improved themselves in terms of their place within that division, especially.
Well, they didn't. I mean, they'll get a compensation pick for him. I knew during the combine, although I was asked not to report it, that they weren't going to franchise him. They wanted to get something in return for him, but somebody in the Bengals building, in the organization, said they want to get something back for him, but it's going to be too much aggravation, too much work to franchise him, then trade him. And what are you going to get back for him? A fourth or fifth round pick? They'll probably get a better compensation pick in 2027. Um, but yeah, and they probably could have. I mean, not that they signed anybody else for big money. They probably could have got him at a better deal a year ago, even 2 years ago, because he wanted an extension 2 years ago than the money he's getting right now.
I mean, the market. You look at just how the markets have reset themselves. That could have been a bargain deal for the Bengals 2 years ago, like you said. All right, other big news this week that happened pretty much at the tail end of week one. Kyler Murray joins the Vikings on a 1 year deal. Wasn't a huge shock in terms of how the tea leaves were reading, but joins a competition now with JJ McCarthy. Uh,
Mm.
Knowing what we know of Murray, knowing the flashes that he's provided, and the hype that's around him and that he can create. Do you feel like this is game over for McCarthy in Minnesota and almost as a starter in the NFL?
Well, the latter is yet to be seen. Is this
Yeah,
the end for JJ McCarthy in Minnesota? I think it's potentially the beginning. I mean, go back to what I wrote at the combine. I wrote, if you go back to that article, I said that there were people who thought that JJ McCarthy's career in Minnesota was over, but at the very least, they were going to bring in a veteran to compete with JJ McCarthy. They did the latter,
yep,
so it was right on I hit on that. Now with Kyler Murray brings a lot of baggage with him. You know,
sure.
there are some areas of the league where he's not well liked. It's been up and down in Arizona. So really, for the Vikings to bring him in my opinion, is very telling, considering that baggage that he brings with him. And that's very telling as far as the future of JJ McCarthy. I think what they'll do is it's going to be an open competition, as I wrote about during the combine. And I think that if Kyler Murray wins that competition outright early, it could be a situation where the Vikings eventually cut JJ McCarthy early into the 2026 season. I'm sure somebody else will pick him up. I mean, is his career as a starter over? Well, we said the same thing about Sam, or many of us thought the same thing about Sam Darnold. Now he's holding up a Super Bowl trophy, so I wouldn't throw the towel in just yet on him.
You talk about quarterbacks and careers in the balance. It just happened while we were on the air here. The Jets have traded Justin Fields to the Chiefs for a pick. So at least
A,
at
a
least
pick of
Fields
what?
gets to train behind Mahomes now, right?
I mean, I guess it was a bad signing by the Jets. I think the interesting thing with the Jets is they can't go into the season with just Geno Smith. I had
Yeah.
said from the my reporting at the combine, Darren Moogie, the general manager, like Tanner McKee for the Eagles, Davis Mills of the Houston Texans. You're going to have to trade for either of those players. There's also some talk that they may bring in Carson Wentz. I don't know how Carson Wentz is any different from Geno Smith, except he can't finish a full season. So the Jets are not done at the quarterback position. Uh, if they don't make a move by draft day, they could be active in selecting a quarterback on draft. If they don't make a move to bring in a veteran or a younger guy by draft day, they'll probably use one of their selections on a quarterback.
If you had to put a percentage on, because you mentioned it earlier in the pod here, if you had to put a percentage on Ty Simpson somehow going to two, where would you put a percentage on that right now? 10%?
Yeah, maybe 15%, maybe slightly higher. I mean, if it was me personally, it would be about 2%.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to factor in quarterbacks are overrated. Again, I mentioned from the at the combine that Simpson was going to be drafted much earlier than people thought. And they talked about it today. I even saw somebody said, and I don't believe it, the Commanders could be interested in Simpson. I'm going to say about 15%. Um, in one hand, I don't agree with it because I don't think Ty Simpson is worth nearly the second pick of the draft.
Yeah, yeah.
On the other hand, as we talked about last week with Page, you get these people say, "Well, we'll get our quarterback in 2027. We'll get our quarterback next year," and next year never pans out. So I guess even though I don't like Simpson at 2, I can't be hypocritical and say, "Well, if the quarterback's sitting there waiting for him, staring in the face, you pass up the quarterback now and roll your dice a year from now." That's a difficult thing. I'm going to say 15%.
Is there any Penix type situation, Tony, where a third quarterback comes into play here that is not really on the radar? It doesn't seem like there's any hype in that direction. It's just I didn't hear at this stage of the game last year. I didn't hear any hype for Penix in the top 10 either. So,
Well, it was 2 years ago, but yeah,
2 years.
I
Excuse
understand
me.
your
Yeah,
question. Yeah, and I would agree with that. The thing is, this is after Mendoza, even after Simpson, there's no quarterback in this draft that is equal to Michael Penix. I mean, physically, whatever. The question with Penix was he had a lot of injuries. There was some inconsistency. He was the best. He was one of the best deep ball throwers in that class of
for sure.
quarterbacks. Uh, Michael Penix has much more going for him the year he was selected, 2024, than any quarterback not named Fernando Mendoza, and very likely Ty Simpson has in this class. And I'm sure that there will be some that will argue that Michael Penix was a better prospect than Ty Simpson. I think Simpson, I think, is more accurate. He does a better job leading the team. I think Penix was a little bit better at moving his head, not staring on the primary target.
Maybe
Simpson,
a higher ceiling in regards
and
to
Penix
Simpson,
also,
right?
well, maybe, but I mean, Penix also had a lot more playing experience, a lot more starting experience at first Indiana than Washington.
For sure. Um, will NFL going back to the Crosby Hendrickson saga? Will NFL teams be scared away from dealing with the Ravens after the whole Crosby Hendrickson mess?
No, I doubt it. I mean, this is not an ongoing situation. This is like a first time incident. If it was something that the Ravens had a reputation for doing, that's a red flag. But team will still make deals with the Ravens if the right deal is offered to them.
All right, Tony. Let's move on to some hot topic questions. Some for social. Who will be, in your opinion, who will be the biggest breakout player next season?
Yeah, I would look to Bashaud of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who now
Ooh.
becomes their number one running back by default with Travis, however you say his last name. Moving on to the New Orleans Saints. Tootin's a good running back. He
He
was really
is.
good at Virginia Tech. Um, he struggled his senior year because he had an ankle injury. He was never 100%. He's an explosive back. He can take it the distance. Obviously, with that offense, that's the type of back that Liam Cohen likes. I think Bashaud Tootin is a guy to keep an eye on as a breakout player.
How do you feel about Charbonneau in Seattle? Is he ready to be? Is just like Tootin is default number one in Jacksonville. This gives in theory gives Charbonneau a bigger shot there now. Is he ready to be that breakout guy?
Well, I don't think in theory. I think it absolutely does. Now
Yeah,
he had an injury in the playoffs. We have to see where he comes back. I always liked Charbonnet when he was coming out of UCLA. I thought it was a terrific pick. I know that the Seahawks feel that he is ready to be the number one back. It's a question of how soon he comes back from that injury. As I said, reported on Essentially Sports, they'll probably either draft another running back or sign one, sort of as behind Charbonnet. From a physical skills point of view, there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to take over that number one spot.
And from a fantasy perspective, he's always produced and it was always, got a lot of short yardage touchdowns and some big gainers. Durability's always been the question, right? And like you said, if they still have that two back system, he just becomes the feature guy now. Um, he'll get more snaps, but hopefully they can manage him on the durability front.
And being injury prone as a bigger back is a major red flag.
Absolutely. Uh, who, in your opinion, are a few overrated stars in the NFL right now?
I'll go one defense, one offense. Defensively, Odafe Oweh, who went from the Baltimore Ravens and signed a huge contract, 4-year contract for $100 million with the Washington Commanders. People will talk about, well, the Cowboys should have gone after Maxx Crosby, should have gone after Trey Hendrickson. They got Rashawn Gary. You look at Rashawn Gary, who at first was used as a middle linebacker with the Green Bay Packers, or used at linebacker, then finally used as an edge rusher. His stats are not that different from uh, Way stats coming out of Penn State, and he's a guy who's never lived up to expectations for me. I never understood why he was a first round pick. He signed a huge contract, good for him. He's not that great of a player. He's not that good of a player for that type of money. So I think away on defense. On offense, I got to say Jalen Hurts. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if the Eagles look quarterback this year. Jalen Hurts needs everything working around him for Jalen Hurts to be a good quarterback. 3 years ago, when A.J. Brown was injured, Jalen Hurts suffered. 2 years ago, when they won the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts played well, but Saquon Barkley had a knockout season, had a great season. Last year, Barkley was not as effective as he was in 2025 compared to 2024. A.J. Brown was disgruntled. Jalen Hurts did not play as well as played poorly in many spots. So I think Jalen Hurts in my opinion, is an overrated quarterback. Wouldn't surprise me to see Howie Roseman, address the quarterback position during the draft. Although it's going to be a little bit difficult after the first two guys are off the board.
Yeah, it becomes what more of a fifth round, sixth round situation at that point. That's not going to impact in terms of probably pushing Hurts that much, right?
Well, now that they signed the cornerback, we'll see what happens. I mean, could they, if Ty Simpson starts to fall, could they trade up for it? Would be the first time Howie Roseman traded up for a quarterback he liked. If the kid from North Dakota State is there in the third round, I could see the Eagles looking in that direction.
I would say I would say, quite honestly, good on Kenneth Walker for getting that contract. Had a huge Super Bowl, but in terms of just consistent dependability, durability, productivity, uh, that's going to be an overrated situation for me in Kansas City. Might be the right system for him, but I seriously question whether he can live up to all the hype around him right now.
Yeah, I don't think he has to though with the quarterback there. I think if they protect the quarterback and they get a few more pieces, I think Kenneth Walker. I mean, who thought that Isaiah Pacheco was going to be such an outstanding running back? With the quarterback there, the running back is a secondary position. He's not going to have to carry the offense. And the
You
kid, I said the kid from North Dakota State. I should have mentioned his name, Cole Payton.
Yes, Cole Payton. Absolutely. A lot of talk around him. And when you talk about Pacheco, even with Pacheco, it's like I feel the same way about Walker that I felt about Pacheco. Like, yeah, Pacheco was decent for the Chiefs, but was just never consistently productive and durable enough to be there when fully needed, quite honestly, in all the pressure situations. And that's my question around Walker, quite honestly, is just the durability and being there to take some of the pressure off Mahomes this year.
Well, I think he will take the pressure off Mahomes. I also think when you're talking about the Chiefs, go back to what I said earlier, go back to my mock draft. They got to address the offensive line because they've had some major misses on that offensive line. They've drafted a lot of left tackles that have never panned out. And regardless of whether you're blocking for Patrick Mahomes or Kenneth Walker or Isaiah Pacheco or whoever, you better have a good offensive line, and they've struggled in that area. I mean, they traded away Joe Thuney. You look how good Thuney's done. They've had a couple other misses on the offensive line, so I think that also is a part of the problem.
All right, one more I wanted to bring up to you because we were doing this on Essentially Sports this week with March Madness. We are doing a Super Bowl uh, or a all-time greatest NFL team March Madness bracket. We put 64 teams in the bracket. Um, our number one seeds are the 85 Bears, the 89 49ers, the 91 Redskins, and the 04 Patriots. Out of those four, who do you like the most to run the table in a bracket?
I'd go with the Bears. I mean, they lost what one. I'm surprised none of the Steeler teams from the '70s made it. Um, Considering how dominant they were in in an era where there was no free agency and no salary cap. But I would go with the Bears. I mean, they lost what one regular season game that year, and they just marched through the regular season and through the playoffs. So I'd absolutely go with the Bears.
The 78 Steelers were the fifth ranked team, so they were the number one two seed. So they are in the 89 49ers bracket. So the 78 Steelers are a two seed. Let me see outside of that. Yeah, a lot of Steelers teams in the 2, 3, 4 zone. But you're right. You're right. And, you know, recency bias, I think,
Mm.
honestly, on some of this. Although, the most recent team was the '04 Patriots. Some of these young guys didn't even make, our younger voters per se didn't even make that much of a push for any of the more recent teams. So, and I had no influence on the '04 Patriots. I didn't want the I didn't want the '04 Patriots. I didn't want any of the Patriots as number one seeds, but democracy ruled there. All right, so check that out on Essentially Sports. Also on Essentially Sports, please check out the whoops, nope, wrong one. Uh, Check out Tony's draft board, the big board on Essentially Sports. Big update to the draft board this week. You have been extremely busy, sir.
Hmm. Yeah, you'll never know. Yeah, last week it was update with grades, based on some of the combine information, results, I should say, based on some of the film work. Also uploaded about 90 reports from the Big Ten. Yesterday, I sent a 36-page document to my proofreader, which is the SEC reports, and I'm only up to Oklahoma. So that will be coming, I would say, in another week and a half. Some minor grade adjustments. I wouldn't imagine too many grade adjustments because not much is going on. You can't have players jumping up and down boards because of good pro day workouts. But there'll be a lot more scouting reports in there from the SEC, which, from my end anyway, seems to be never ending.
I bet. I bet just you getting through the Big Ten must have felt like uh huge burden off the shoulders, but still miles to go before you sleep.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the SEC, and it's why I mean, it's funny. The Big Ten's won the last couple national championships, last three, I believe. But the SEC, I mean, each team's got 10, 12, 13 prospects on each team. Oklahoma had 13. Texas A&M's got 12 or 13. Where with the Big Ten, you'll have Ohio State and Penn State that's got 13, and then you'll have Northwestern that has two. Or you have Purdue that's got two. The only SEC team that I can think of off the top of my head that has two prospects. I'm doing scouting reports is Vanderbilt, and that's Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers, the tight ends. Stowers is going to be an early pick.
Nice. Nice. All right, so tons of work already been done on the draft board. More work to come, more information to come. Check out the Tony Pauline draft board on essentiallysports.com. And man, huge props to all the work you've been putting in there, sir.
Thank you. Still work to go, and it'll be fine tuned up until draft weekend. That's for sure.
Fantastic. All right, let's get into the mailbag now. Uh Great questions as always. Let's start with the it always seems to be one of the bigger questions. Why did the Cowboys not go after Trey or Trey Hendrickson or Maxx Crosby?
They did. I don't know where that question is, where the foundation for that question is. They did go after Maxx Crosby. It's just at the time the Raiders got a better offer and 2 first-round picks. I was told that they did go after Trey Hendrickson. They were in the Trey Hendrickson sweepstakes till the end. It's just that they didn't want to pay up the amount of money and then they traded, as I said earlier, they traded for Rashad Gary, a decent pass rusher. So they did, in fact, they were in the talks and conversations for both of those players. At some point in time, I mentioned earlier, when it comes to injured players, you have to figure out where the reward outweighs the risk. At this point in time, when you're paying huge amounts of money, almost $30 million a year for Trey Hendrickson, you're giving up multiple first-round picks for Maxx Crosby. You got to figure out where the risk is greater than the reward. And I think that's what happened with the Cowboys.
When like you said, they did make moves. A lot of oftentimes fans are results based, and if a move doesn't get made in their mind, nothing was done there, right?
Right.
And that's just not the case. There's so much due diligence being done, especially in the $1 billion commodity market that we are talking about when it comes to players now. Um, a lot of work was done there, so it's not like they did not go after him. It's just it wasn't prudent, so to speak. All
Yeah,
right,
I mean,
next.
it's all based. The results are right now are based on paper. That's all it is.
Yep.
So if you don't get your favorite player, doesn't mean it's the end of the world.
Why is no QB needy team making more of a move for Mac Jones yet?
Well, first of all, Mac Jones is still under contract, so
Yes.
he's not a free agent. He's still under contract now.
He was
I,
one of
I,
those trading quarterback, much like McKee and Mills. He was one of those guys that would need to be traded for.
right now, two things. Number one, Mac Jones as a starter, as a consistent starter, really never proved himself. So the situation has to be correct, right on for Mac Jones, to be a 17 game starter on Sunday. And it's sort of like the Malik Willis situation, although Mac Jones started for longer. You don't know what you're getting in the guy for 17 games. The history shows it's not that good. The other thing is San Francisco may not want to part with Mac Jones. I go back to what I wrote about with Tyson Bagent. There were a lot of the backup for the Chicago Bears. A lot of teams are interested in Tyson Bagent, but the Bears like their quarterback room and they want to keep Bagent around. So it's going to take a big offer to pry Bagent away from the Bears. Could be the same situation with the Niners. They like the quarterback room. They're not paying Mac Jones a huge amount of money. Brock Purdy's not the biggest guy in the world. So unless somebody's going to make a big offer to the Niners for Mac Jones, they're probably just very happy keeping him there.
Absolutely. He's a great insurance policy. And like you said, not proven as a full-time starter, but man, he's come in bursts and plugged a lot of holes for them this season, that's for sure. And definitely helped his stock. Helped. And listen, I was not, as a Patriots guy, uh Mac Jones was a more of a whiner than a producer, and more of a distraction, quite honestly, in terms of just his lack of leadership. And he's admittedly grown up a lot, and got in the right system with Shanahan now that is maximizing his skill sets. So good on him. Like you said, and you mentioned Willis. Listen, I don't want to pile on. I was going to mention Willis as probably one of my most overrated players right now. But listen, the Dolphins see something in him, so I'm not going to pile on there. I want to see what he can do as a full-time starter. They obviously, I'm not a paid front office guy like those two Packers guys that went to the Dolphins are. So they obviously see something in him that they like a lot, that says he can be a starter for them.
Sometimes a change of scenery is also good for a player. We talked about that last week with Page, with Drew Alar. We'll see if that's the situation with Malik Willis.
Absolutely. All right, what will the Colts do with Anthony Richardson? He was trying to fish around for a trade, didn't develop. The market didn't develop for him. Are they someone you see that could draft a quarterback?
Maybe day three. I mean, they just agreed to Daniel Jones with a 2 year deal worth $44 million a year. So they got Daniel Jones in the mix. You don't know when Daniel Jones is going to be playing because he had that late season Achilles injury. I'm sure they hope he's going to be back for week one. I mean, Anthony Richardson is just a huge mistake for the Colts. I like Chris Ballard, the general manager, but he's never been able to get the quarterback situation right. Going back to when he traded for Matt Ryan and some of the other quarterbacks, Anthony Richardson, I thought at the time I said so. It was so. I mean, he had more starting experience than Ty Simpson, or he had as much, I should say, but he didn't play well. I mean, he was a guy that had great physical skills. I think they'd love to trade him. Could they draft a quarterback? I mean, maybe in day three. I don't think they're going to do it in the second or third round. But I think possibly in day three they could look to select a quarterback.
Which team is one defensive player away from becoming a Super Bowl favorite in your view?
I think we already mentioned them, the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, they needed help at cornerback. That was apparent last year. They got not one but two cornerbacks. They got a really good cornerback in Trent McDuffie. The offense is there. They got to, make sure that they protect Stafford. See if they want to keep him moving forward. But I think we already saw that with the Los Angeles Rams when they traded for McDuffie and then they signed Watson as a free agent. So they filled two cornerback spots and brought back their safety, Cam Curl.
Yeah, and again, you know, uh, no, they had a hole to fill there, but still a really good defensive team that just got better.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous. That's dangerous. All right, which team has the biggest roster hole heading into the draft for you?
Well, I hate to continually bash him and beat a dead horse, but you got to look at the Jets and the quarterback situation. I mean, does anybody think Geno Smith is going to be a 17-game starter in New York? And if he is a 17-game starter, how many games is he going to win? I like Geno Smith personally. You talked about Mac Jones growing up. That's been Geno Smith. He deserves a lot of credit. But I mean, he's on the tail end of his career, playing on a team that doesn't seem to have any direction. So was
Overcoming,
Geno
having to overcome some ghosts.
was Geno Smith a good trade for the Jets? Yes, because it's not costing that much money. The Raiders are picking up a large bulk of his salary, and they basically swap late round picks. But I mean, are you really going to count and depend on Geno Smith? Even though I think he is a better quarterback to lead the franchise for 17 games in 2026. Well, if that answer is yes for you, good luck.
All right, I'm going off script here with one more question, Tony. The Ursay collection
Oh,
went to auction this week. $93 million worth of memorabilia, including a lot of Beatles memorabilia. Now, you are a huge Led Zeppelin fan. Uh,
yes.
if there was one piece of memorabilia surrounding Led Zeppelin and
Wow.
you had $10 million to bid at one of these auctions, what would be that one thing you have to have?
Wow, that's a good question. I know that the gong that John Bonham, the drummer, used to use was just sold at auction, I believe, for $1 million. That would be one. Maybe one of Jimmy Page's guitars. Maybe the bow that he used on the guitar during Dazed and Confused, which I'm sure is in the garbage somewhere right now because I'm
Yeah.
sure he didn't keep them around. Maybe the original. Anybody's familiar with the Presence album? The thing that the black you can buy duplicates of it. Uh, I forget what they call it. Oh God, uh, the black thing on the Presence album. I think I know if I paid $10 million for it, but that blue shirt that Robert Plant wore like every concert in 1973. In fact, if you ever seen the poster where he's holding the pigeon, he's holding the dove actually. Uh, that shirt's probably worth a lot of money. I'm sure that shirt is in the garbage somewhere, but that would be fun to have.
Are you a memorabilia guy at all? Do you have any Led Zeppelin memorabilia?
The Led Zeppelin memorabilia that I have is my ticket stub when I saw him in 1977 and the WPLJ pin, which I have somewhere around here, which they gave me as I was walking in. I am not a memorabilia guy. I am
Okay.
somebody I'm a minimalist. I throw stuff out to the point where I throw out important stuff and my wife gets crazy. And I was like, well, it was sitting around for 3 weeks. I told you to do something with it. And it ends up in the garbage. So, no, I am not a memorabilia guy at all.
Nice, nice. All right. Listen, catch us on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Catch us on our YouTube channel. You'll see the podcast on the DraftCast newsletter on Tuesdays. Sign up for the huddle on essentiallysports.com. All the places that you can check out the DraftCast and obviously all of Tony's latest work is at essentiallysports.com. Uh, Looking forward to seeing you later this week, sir. And safe travels to you. And hope everybody has a great week. We'll talk to you next week on the ES Draftcast with Tony Pauline.